What's up, guys? So, as you guys know, I've been on the Z690 Formula for the last few weeks on my return build. Um, Part of the reason why I got this board was just for the testing purposes, just to see what a 4-DIMM board from the first generation of Intel DDR5 boards could do, test its PCB limits, and see, if there's any potential in it, and just see how it behaves, I guess, just see what it performs like. And I've actually got some interesting results for you guys. And now, this might not be exactly applicable to your setup because obviously a lot of you guys watching my channel right now have Encores, you guys have docks, you guys have some of the boards I've recommended in the past, and you guys all likely have the new M-Die, or a lot of you I know have the new M-Die. I can access a kit. I'm potentially going to buy a new kit of M-Die just to test when I do get some money in. But right now I'm just on A-Die, and honestly I've had some very interesting results with A-Die, so I think you guys will actually appreciate what I'm about to show you. So I'm going to open up this, and I'm going to just come out and say that, yeah, this OC that I made a video on in the very beginning, funny enough, this OC actually destabilized. It seemed pretty stable. I did run VT3 between cold boots, and obviously, like, there was quite a while between this boot and the next. Just this was done at 10 p.m. the screenshot, right? So, and the next retest was done after load shedding. So I had a full like few hours out of power, and I was like, I was done testing at like almost 3 a.m., 23 in the morning. So this screenshot was like almost 5 hours apart from the last screenshot. So it was a long time that I had my PC off, at least a few hours. And but yeah, this OC like destabilized. Now, funny thing, guys, I've noticed that this board actually really likes 6800. So as you can see, I've done quite a lot of testing. Now, this was on this kit right here. You can see, this is a G-Skill, one of those good old 6400 C32 bins, Hynix A-Die, the original kits that we used to use back when A-Die was scarce. And the first testing I did was pretty promising. It wasn't very difficult for me to get this done with 4.8 on the RRD timings and like 16 T4 and stuff. So I was like quite excited. Also used I started using TWR pre to set TWR just for fun. And yeah, I mean, these primaries aren't super good, but this kit pretty much required these voltages, so 1.45, 1.45, and then for some reason this board doesn't like to use more than 1.4 VDE2, and I think that's part of why the 7000 OCD stabilized, because as I've mentioned to you guys before, this rail is incredibly important. It pretty much tells you what your board can do data rate wise. Now, obviously, you get some anomalies like the Apex, where on the Apex, on some samples, you don't need much VDD2 to actually run high data rates, and that's a nuance that the Apex experiences, and it's a good thing for the Apex in a way, but really, like, the higher this rail can be run, like not safely, but like stable, or like the better your board handles this rail, the better the time you'll have getting data rate stable. And so I'm gonna show you guys just now some interesting like deductions from this. So as you can see, these are the things I needed for this data rate, right? And for these timings. Now, I retested it a few times. I did it here for 30 minutes, and I did another retest again for 30 minutes. This is like days later. And then I ran the new, I ran a different TM5 config file, just for fun, to see what it would pass. So I ran that days later, and it still passed. Then I dumped this kit because I didn't really like care for it, because this kit wasn't terribly good. So I ended up getting a Corsair kit. Finally got my first kit of high bin A-Die today, actually. And testing on this went surprisingly smooth. I haven't even swapped the sticks around, and I was able to get the same voltage, so same voltage as the previous kit, 1.45 volts, right? But I ended up getting 39s on these middle timings, and it gets better. So I was like, hey, well, what are the odds this kit can actually run C30? And yeah, I did more cycles on the config as well, and yeah, another hour of VT3. Um, and yeah, that was easy. I mean, it was really easy. And this is a good sign because I always say like this is how it should be. You shouldn't have like too much difficulty getting a config stable. If you have to fiddle around for hours and days to get something stable, it's usually a sign that that config isn't going to hold. And the fact that this board is handling this data rate so well and performing so consistently at this data rate tells me that it's a very safe area for me to work within, because when you start struggling with like making minute changes to voltages, that's when you get like the weird reboot problems. And it's a sign the board just can't hold data rates. So this was a very nice surprise. And as I said, I still haven't swapped the sticks around, so I still don't know if I'm running them in optimal config. Like, for all I know, like swapping them around, I might get 7,000. So I'm actually gonna go 7,000 testing, in a short while. But there were some things I wanted to speak about besides this testing stuff. I'm gonna pull up my notepad real quick just so I can have a point of reference. Okay, so yeah, Karu is something that I wanted to speak about. So my issue with Karu, the way it's being used right now, is that I think now I can't prove anything obviously, because like I've always told you guys, this stuff isn't exact science and there's no documentation on how to do this properly. It's all done by testing and trial and error. But my gripe with Karu testing, this whole like 24-hour Karu thing is, first of all, I've heard people say that they've errored at 17,000% and 20,000% and whatever else, right? So like my issues, like I'm gonna write them down just because it might make more sense to have them written down. But the first problem is, if you're erroring at 17,000% or 20,000%, oh crap, I mean hours, not percent. Because this is something I fundamentally don't understand. Like, because everyone's saying you have to pass 24 hours, 24 hours. Why 24 hours? What does 24 hours mean? A single day in Earth time? Like, yeah, I guess so. Like what? It's a one rotation of the Earth, okay? Like technically, not always, but technically it's on average, like, around 24 hours is one day. Okay. Why does your RAM care that that 24 hours is one day? Why does your RAM give a shit? Like that's my biggest issue, is like to set this arbitrary number, and it's like, okay, now it's stable. Now it has to be stable. It's like, but why not test for like a week then? Like, if that's the goal, like, why not test for a week then? Why is 24 hours stable? Then why not just make it like a week, like 7 days stable? Why not make it 14 days stable, month stable, 1 year stable? Like, where do we get these arbitrary, like, you know um like milestones? Like, why does this have to be a thing? I don't get it. It's very peculiar to me. Like, what are you saying? So you're saying basically it means that you can game for a full day, 24 hours. Well, what if I want to game for 36 hours straight? Why can't I do that then? Oh, so it's not stable. Okay, well, I should do Karu 36 hours then, right? Wait, I don't know, man. It's like, I feel like it's a fundamental lack of understanding of why the RAM is actually destabilizing. And this is actually why I wanted to show you guys the OneDrive folder earlier on. Because I wanted you guys to see how, you remember in the beginning of DDR5, I always used to say like, no, you have to get everything like zoned in, like nailed. It has to be perfect, and that is true to a degree. That is true. If you want to actually max out your board, or if you want to run near the threshold of what's possible, then yeah, of course you're gonna have to nail every single value. But the problem is that you've got this whole thing going on online. People saying that Intel IMCs are unstable and they're unreliable, and you can't run them like for long periods of time. There's always gonna be errors and blah blah. It's like the thing is that when you have like good conditions, you can actually do cool stuff like this, which is like, you can have a config that can pass like multiple like TM5 like testing configurations, right? Days apart, right? It can pass Maximus, it can pass PCB Destroyer, and VT3 runs like, days apart. You can run VT3 on the 11th of February, and then I ran it again on the 12th of February, and then I ran it again on the 15th of February, and then like you can have these configs that pass stress tests days apart. And what that tells you is the actual training was consistent. And it's important because there are things that we can't identify being trained in the background when our RAM initializes. Stuff like the sense amplifiers, whatever else. And it was, disable. No, do not do that. Do not disable sense amp. I've tested disabling like certain algorithms, and I'm confused as to what the benefit is, because I've always found that disabling like test algorithms just like makes the RAM less stable every single time. I don't know what the goal is with that, but I mean, I don't know. Like I feel like training is always good, so I'm not sure why you'd want to disable a training algorithm. But the training isn't the problem. It's not the problem is not the training. It's like the board isn't the reason. Like, okay, the board is the reason, but the board isn't like the problem. The problem is like your own mentality of like having to get like the max speed stable that you desire. That's actually the problem. Is like, yes, the problem with Intel DDR5 is actually our own like ambition to get like the max stable config, right? But the motherboard and the RAM sticks and the CPU IMC have like a environment they like to operate within, and when you go above and beyond that, you start introducing weirdness. Now, what I've been able to now deduce with these two ADI kits, now they both ADI kits, they're both real ADI, guaranteed ADI, right? Except the one kit's binned really nicely, and the other kit's binned really poorly. So what you found is that data rate wise, the 7200 kit isn't really any better at running 7200 than the 6400 kit. They both can't run that data rate on this board because this board can't do 7200, right? But what you find is that at 6800, right, the better bin kit with the better ICs, the objectively better ICs, can run the same data rate with better timings, right? Better timings at the same voltage. And interestingly enough, like notice how both run 6800 at this like voltage, 1.45 volts, the same VDD2 values, right? So the same VDD2 value, 1.4 volts set, right, in BIOS, the same SA, 0.95, the same TX, 1.25. I always keep telling you guys, like, 1.25 TX is plenty. It's plenty. It's more than enough. 1.35 is great. 1.4, 1.45, 1.5, 1.6, that honestly just fucks up your training. It fucks it up. Like, unless you're on a broken Asus BIOS from like last year, or like the years before, where you had to have like stupid 1-to-1 TX dumb relationships, whatever, to like get your board to actually train. Aside from those like fringe scenarios, high TX actually compromises training. So when you have super high TX values, you're probably fucked regardless. I'm just going to tell you that. Like, if you have to train at 1.45 TX, expect your OC to be gone in, like, a week. Like, because it's not like it's degradation. It's just, like, it's not going to be stable. It's like, it's not gonna hold. It's just not gonna stick. It's not gonna stick. It just isn't gonna stick. So, um, yeah, like the same voltages, and then you get better timings. Get better timings. The subs don't really change. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong screenshot I'm showing you guys. Sorry. Just looking for this one. So, same voltages, 0.95 SA, 1.25 TX, 1.4 V32, same voltages, same CPU settings, same everything. It nothing changes. Like the sub timings don't change. These all stay the same. Like they all stay the same except T-Refi goes up because now the kit's better binned and runs a bit colder. So T-Refi can go up because there's more voltage supply. So notice how like when the board actually handles the data rate well, like so what does this remind you of? Right? What does that remind you of? I'll show you what it reminds me of. Like I've said, when the board handles the data rate well, right? All of a sudden, things make sense, right? Now, if you recall, Bulldoid had an early Apex. What was he stable at? 6180. 6180 with a BCLK, a different BCLK. I think it was like 102 or something. I can't, don't quote me, but it was high. It was higher than 100. I found that setting 6133 at 100 BCLK, running in 1T mode, was rock solid. It was completely rock solid. Like, now never mind the Karu, I'm using Karu here and I'm not running like TM5 or like VT3. I'm telling you right now, like this was a rock solid config. Back then we used to do 10,000% Karu, which was deemed as fine. But like, dude, the timing on this is like, just look at the timings. Like, look at them. Like, look at these timings. Like, just like for fun, basically. Like 8-8, like 8 TRTP. What the fuck is this? Like 8 TRTP, bro. Like, what the hell? Like 26 Keys WL, 6 TRD SG, 14 sevens, 14 sevens, 18 8. Like, super tight and no issues. Like, and also there was another batch of testing I did. I think on this CPU. Yeah, look. I had the exact same data rate on 2 different CPUs, dude. 2 different CPUs, guys, and like vastly different chips. A KF and a K and vastly different P cores and E core SPs and probably MCSPs, because I think this chip actually had a much worse IMC than another chip. But look at this. I mean, look at these timings, dude. Look at these timings. 35s, dude. Look at this. This is stupid. Like, I mean, look at this. Hold on. Let me show you guys. So, look at this graduation from like. So, this was on. Man, can I not go there? This was on 13 July, 2022, right? And now I've passed a bit of IBT, right? At these at these timings. Like, look at these timings. Look at this. Like, just look at this. This is absurd. Like, look at this. This is crazy. Like, look at these timings, dude. Just look at them, dude. Look at these timings. Like, what the fuck, dude? Look at this, right? And then I passed Karu on the 4th of July. This was on 13th July. This came later, right? So I passed Karu. Okay, so I passed all these Karus, then I went to this. So this was on 4th of July. Pre-test, right? Pre-test. These timings, okay? I even had this TRF at the time. I had like 192,000, just being funny. Second test, 10,000% with the crazy TRF value, right? I lower TRF, right? So now what I'm gonna now I've lowered TRF. Now obviously I've definitely left too much voltage right now because I've lowered it. So now there's too much voltage spare. So now it's gonna be unstable, right? Nope. Still stable. Like, and again, like, these are stupid values, like crazy values. Check the voltages. 1.5, 1.45. Now let's see if I change them. 0.5, 0.45. Past 10,000% again. Now I'm at 1.47s on them. Still stable. Like, we started at 1.5, 1.45, and now at 1.47s, still stable. And then we pass IBT at 1.47s, I think. Might be 1.5, 1.47, I don't know. But whatever. Like, do you see what the behavior is meant to be like when a motherboard is at a data rate it can handle? Like, that's the point I'm trying to make. Like, the point is, the changes should make sense. A lot of people are, like, doing these things, or, like, testing 10 different SA values in one day, and then they're testing this and testing that, and then they've got, like, 20 millivolts between VDDQ and VDD. Like, dude, there's too much testing going on. There's too much testing. Like, if it takes you 10 hours to pass like 10 runs of VT3, just give up. Just give up. It's a lost cause. It really is a lost cause. Right? Like, this is something we have to understand, because it's not doing the scene favors, like, and it's spreading confusion, and it's not helping anyone. And it's allowing people to, like, spread false narratives, like, oh no, you got to test for 50 hours, otherwise the IMC is gonna freak out and kill you. And it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, what the fuck? What's going on? Like, fuck this, dude. This is stupid. Like, this is stupid. This is so stupid. Like, and it doesn't make any sense, because you're gonna test for 24 hours and then train the board again a week later. It's gonna be unstable. Like, it's gonna happen. Okay, now I'm not saying that's guaranteed. Obviously, if your OC can pass 24 hours of testing straight, then the odds of it being stable are quite high, right? Logically speaking. But the fact that Karu was errored at 21 hours, or like 17 hours, to me, makes me question how reliable it is as a stress test. Because if you're erroring in 17 hours, how did it not find the error, like, at 5 hours or 4 hours? Like, doesn't that just make it a really bad stress test? I don't know. But whatever. Anyway, like, I've used Karu. You can use Karu, but I would argue, like, maybe VT3 and one of the TM5 configs run for a few hours and then done over a period of days would be much more, like, reliable. So that's just something I don't get. But nevertheless, yeah. But understand, guys, the point is, like, if you're at a data rate your board can handle, like mine is right now at 6800, you should be able to do stuff like this. You should be able to go, right, with all the RAM settings, like the last kit settings. I'm like, cool, bet. Let me get the last kit settings. I'm going to drop the TRCD values and the TRP value. I'm going to keep everything identical, right? Identical, voltage-wise. Different kits, mind you. and then pass again, and then I'm gonna raise Tirefi and drop CAS at the same voltage and pass again. It's like that's what it's meant to be like. You're not meant to be doing like 20 changes in like the span of 5 hours to get VT3 to pass like, 20 times. Or like test for a whole day or two to get car route to not error at like 15 hours. Like, I don't get it, man. Like, just like use settings that make sense. Like, if you have a data rate that's easy, and the next one up is like near impossible, just do the easy one. Like, I don't understand. Like, we're missing the point, and then we're ending up in the situation where now, people don't find it like fun to OC anymore because, like, there's no certainty. Right? Uncertainty is not good. Like, humans don't like uncertainty. So now that we have this like uncertainty introduced in the scene, people don't trust like overclocking and the hardware in general. Like, we all think there's something funny going on, when really it's like it's not that deep, right? It's not that deep. It's just that our boards aren't really made super well at the moment on Intel side, and yeah, I mean that's why we have these situations, because the optimization of BIOS isn't that great. Our boards aren't made that well anymore. For some reason, our QC is not that great. So yeah, like, you have to be realistic and you have to do testing that makes sense, and you have to find the safe zone. And once you're there, you should be able to make changes and make good progressions towards stability without having to like strain yourself. It shouldn't take that long. It shouldn't. Okay, there should be some headroom. Like, if there is no headroom, then the OC is not achievable. Like, that's the truth of it. So there doesn't have to be any 24-hour testing. There doesn't have to be any days of adjustments. There just needs to be like some like rationality introduced into this like process, because right now it's not very rational. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's wild. It's wild. I think it's because DDR5 numbers are so high that like we like to chase a higher number because it's like a big number. So it's like, oh, I can chase like 8,000. So let's chase 8,000. It's like, okay, well, if I don't get 8,000, I've got to get 7,800 because like surely I can do that then. It's like, just do 74. Like, fuck it. Like, it's not gonna matter, right? Like, it's way more fun testing and like being able to make changes and like drop timings and to like have results that make sense and like progressions that make sense, instead of like having like you make like 2 changes and it's like running fine, then it errors, then you make a change in one direction, it still errors, and then you change different direction, and then it keeps erroring, and now it's erroring worse. It's like, it doesn't make any fucking sense then. Like, so just give it up. Like, and by the way, I want to touch on one last thing. This voltage rail, like, I'm gonna get annoyed if people just keep on like pushing this whole, like, listen, like, this voltage rail, it's the fucking same voltage rail we used for fucking 10 years, man. Like, what the fuck? Like, this is literally the same voltage rail as being used by motherboard makers for like the last, not even 10 years, for more than 10 years, for like fucking 25, 30 years now. I don't know how many years, dude. Like, fucking, since DDR got introduced, like, the DDR rail is a motherboard rail. Like, DDR5 is the first RAM that ever had a PMIC, right? Before that, this shit never existed. Like, we didn't have, like, where'd the power come from? Ever asked, like, oh, how did your DDR4 work? Like, how did your DDR4 sticks work? How did your sticks have RGB lighting, right? Where did it come from? The board. Like, the board. Like, what is, hold on. Hold on, guys, hold on. No, I disable these, but let me show you this, so you understand, like, what I'm saying. Like, I won't have this, dude. I won't have this. I'm not allowing this anymore. Like, I'm sick of it. Like, what is this? What does this mean? What is VIN? What is 1.8 volts? When we have VPP. So what's 1.8 volts in? What's that? What's this one? What does that do? Like what's that? What's this one? Like where do these go? Like what does this mean? Guys, the motherboard supplies the voltage to the RAM sticks. And then the RAM sticks have a PMIC that like modulates the voltages. Like that handles the actual like direct power delivery to the ICs. But the motherboard still supplies the voltage. Like it still supplies the power. That's why we still have like caps around the slots, right? So when we didn't have a PMIC back in the day, the board gave the RAM sticks power, and the drive signal voltage, like the DDR rail, existed from then till now. It still exists. Like the DDR rail still has to push the RAM signal to the CPU. So my question then is the argument that our CPUs have become less resistant to this rail? So does it mean like now our CPUs can't handle like a certain amount of VD2 anymore? Why? What changed? What changed? Why can we do like 1.7 volts on DDR4, but now we can't do 1.5 volts VD2 on? Now I'm not using 1.5. My board can't handle it, but if I could do 1.5, why can't my CPU handle it? What's wrong with the CPU? Why can't it? Like why? What changed? Why did my 10850K from 2021, why could that CPU handle it better than this one? Like, was my 10850K a more resistant CPU at the memory PHYs than my 3900K? Is that what you're saying? Like, my 10th Gen i9 had stronger memory PHYs than my 13th Gen one. Why? What changed? Like, what changed? What happened? So, what happened? Like, honestly, what happened? Because Intel says this chip can fucking handle 1.72 volts. That's the spec on the core silicon. So, by that metric, that's internal too, by the way. So why can't my fucking memory PHYs receive 1.5 volts anymore at the socket pins? What happened? Like, what changed? I can't understand that. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. There's no logic behind it. So like, if you want to have a safe limit, so let's say you feel comfortable running a limit, like you don't want to go 1.6 whatever just because you feel like 1.6 is way too high. You don't want to degrade the board's traces. You want to degrade the socket, like sorry like you don't want to degrade the socket pins. You don't want to degrade the DIMM slots. You think maybe it's going to degrade the memory PHYs, whatever. Okay, fine. Then don't do 1.6. It's fine. In fact, in most cases, 1.6 won't work. I think there's only one board that I can imagine can handle 1.6. That's the dock. The dock can do 1.6 for some reason. The dock actually does 1.6 fine on VDD2. But if you don't feel comfortable doing 1.6, then by all means, don't do it. Like, don't do it. It's fine. Like, I would say 1.5 is a nice round number, and I'd say 1.5 is still completely reasonable as long as your board can handle it. But this whole idea that like, oh no, you gotta make it as low as possible. It's like, no, you're just fucking wrong. It's just fucking wrong. It's like, no, like make it as high as you have to. If the board can handle it, and if the data rate that you're aiming for makes sense, it's like, I just don't understand this, like the void of logic, man. It's like these weird misconceptions just spread like wildfire, and then all of a sudden, like, you get these really smart people making these really dumb overclocks that just don't make sense. I don't know. It's like, oh no, well, I've got to run 1.35 because, you know, it's good to have that voltage rail low. It's like, oh, like, have you tried running VD3? Like, dude, Y Cruncher needs high VDD2, by the way. So anyone that like avoids Y Cruncher and then they use like super low VDD2 values, that's why. That's why, by the way, because like I've said before, there is a relationship between Y Cruncher and TestMem5's configs. I'm not sure why, but between this app and these configs in this app, for some reason, there's like a interplay where like voltages that work for the one might fuck up the other one's stability. So like You have to find the right middle ground. But then if you're at a data rate you can't do, then usually you can't run them both together. Does that make sense? So if you're at a fuck data rate, like now I'm not sure if PCB Destroyer is a bit weaker than Maximus. People say it's stronger, so I don't know. But all I can say is, like, if you can't pass, or if you can pass one Maximus and VT3 reliably, and between cold boots, like days apart, you should be fine. Like, you should be fine. But that's contingent on the data rate itself being doable. So what you'll find is, like, you can pass these, like, maybe once on a cold boot and then maybe after a couple more cold boots. But eventually one day, you'll find all of a sudden VT3 now errors in 10 fucking runs or less. And that's the thing. And I mean, it's fucking potent, man. Believe me, man, VT3 is potent. It's a good test, dude. It's a good fucking test. And so is Onusmus. And PCB Destroyer. Like, these are good tests, dude. Like, if your IMC destabilizes, or rather, if your motherboard no longer sustains that signal, I promise you, VT3 is gone. It's gone. 100%. Like, it just takes days to transpire, but it will happen eventually. Like, and you won't have to run 17 hours of Karu to find that out. So, yeah. That's this video. Hope you guys found it interesting. I'm gonna go do some Y cruncher to see if 7,000 is possible on this kit. Probably not, but I'll have to test the better dim config anyway, so might as well just do it. So yeah, I will catch you guys on a different video. So bye for now.